Hello and welcome to the Rask Network. What you're about to hear and see is limited to general financial information only. Please be sure to speak to your financial planner or refer to our financial services guide available at rask.com.au/FSG before acting on the information.
We're back.
We're back.
Zara, how you going?
Good. Jordan, how are you?
Good. Today we're talking all things hiring and managing employees.
We are.
Your
yes.
forte?
It is. I enjoy hiring. I enjoy team management and employee growth.
But you don't enjoy firing?
I do. No, I don't think anyone does.
No, agreed.
I think it's probably a bad place if you enjoy that part, right?
Yeah, 100%. Maybe it's time to change jobs or...
Yeah, move on.
Agreed. Do you want to give us a bit of background on how you've done this before and how it's worked? We've worked previously?
Yeah, absolutely. In my last role, and I mean also for Inflection recently, but in my last role, I was really focused on bringing new people into the organizations. And then once they were in there, it was their kind of employee life cycle.
Yeah.
So what their onboarding looked like, what their training period looked like. And then I guess further on from that, after kind of the first 3 to 6 months, what their progression and growth looked like as well, with the core kind of goal and KPI of employee retention.
Yeah, perfect. And today we want to go through how business owners can do that, the best practices for hiring and managing their staff as well.
Yep.
For me, I think it's one of the most important parts of a small business is having really good people, because if it's just yourself and one or two other people and one of those two is no good and you don't want to have that hard chat, that can cost you a serious amount of money. And there's opportunity cost there too. So I think it's super important to have some type of HR system.
Absolutely.
Even if you are just a one-person band, and if you've got multiple staff, then it really isn't non-negotiable. Where you worked previously, at what point did that system start being implemented, or at what point was there a system implemented? Yeah,
we always had one, but I guess we were a relatively, not a small business, but a relatively small business. We might have had about 25 employees pre-COVID, and then it was COVID and I guess the shift from brick and mortar stores, a lot of businesses were moving online, which really opened up the doors for a lot of clients coming on board, and that saw some really rapid growth for the organisation. And then we started implementing different practices and more appropriate practices and more appropriate processes and systems as a result of a company kind of scaling from 25 employees to 50 employees in a couple of months.
Yeah, cool. And I guess if you didn't have those processes when it was just a 25, it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when we were 25, obviously it's smaller. There's kind of like a much closer knit team. We were more across, I guess, what everyone was doing. And then obviously as the organisation grows and there's more levels of management kind of start to step in, and potentially the initial manager or the CEO gets further and further away from new people coming into the organisation, that's when I think those processes are really important, so that there is standardization of conversations and performance reviews and all those kinds of things.
So to rewind, and let's say we start at the beginning where it's just one or two people and up to that 25 mark, what do you think are the fundamentals of HR management, and why are they important for a small business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously I guess HR involves so many different things, right? It's the recruiting, it's the hiring, it's kind of the training, it's the onboarding, it's the managing of all of those employees. So I think when you are implementing a HR program and a HR kind of policy, it's really going across as an organization, what do we want our policies to be? And when we're thinking about parental leave and all those kinds of things, so how can we kind of be incorporating all of those into the organization as well? But I think there's so many benefits to having a really solid HR policy and like a HR team and a group of people that really understand, I guess, the significance that having a really well thought out team and a really well put together organization, what it can do for businesses, for small businesses. So thinking about like employee productivity, employee satisfaction, obviously as well, if there's a lot of like clearly defined roles and progression opportunities, but then also thinking about like how that relates to the organization's growth as well. If you have really strong employee satisfaction and everyone really loves what they're doing, they're feeling really productive, they're seeing growth within their role, what that does for the business's success and the business's growth as well. And then on the other hand, the retention of those employees, which again, if you're really investing time into developing people and training them and bringing them on board your organization. Ideally, you want them to stick around for as long as possible because they're going to start to then, advocate for the organization on your behalf when you bring new people into the organization too.
And if you can foster that foundation of like A players and how you really invest in your people, it's just a game changer. Because I've been there when working for someone where HR is non-existent, and then at a business where there's a HR manager and there's a HR team, and it's just chalk and cheese.
Absolutely.
It rolls into culture, and it just really does help the staff in their personal and professional development too.
Yeah, I think it can be a really great way of developing that and fostering like a positive workplace.
Yeah.
And it really comes down to, or it can stem from, a HR manager or a HR team.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm just reflecting now about that place that I worked where HR was front of mind, and the activities, development, check-ins, all of that type of stuff. Whereas as a small business, it's usually it doesn't really happen.
Yeah.
So I think if we can get into that mindset and have those processes, I think it can be a game changer for a small business, especially given how hard it is to maintain and hire staff at the moment.
Yeah.
I know all the business owners that I speak to, that's probably the largest pain point is finding staff, finding good staff and being able to retain them.
Yeah.
I think having that HR strategy in place really will help with that.
Yep.
When creating a recruitment plan, what steps do we need to take?
When you are thinking about that recruitment plan, it is, making sure that you as a business owner know what you need in the organization. So what I mean by that is, what type of roles do you need filled? What tasks need to be completed? Is it a capacity component where there's too much work coming in and you don't have the capacity to service it yourself? I think getting really granular on what type of role that would look like and what that job description would look like for somebody, and then making sure that that's super clear. I think the last thing that anyone would want to do would be to bring someone into an organization on false pretenses, as in they think that they're going to be doing something for the organization, then they get there and it's completely different.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important, and that really does come down to, if you have a HR manager, amazing. If you don't, and it is you're the HR manager, then that comes down to you, like making sure that in order to get the right person in your organization, then you do need to be really clear on what that job description looks like and what those KPIs look like as well.
Yeah.
What growth looks like, what progression looks like, what opportunities look like. I think the same as like if you were to shift to a new business, you would want to know what the next kind of 2 to 3 years would look like if you were to stay around in that organization. So I think it's really important to be clear and to show that through those job descriptions, as well as be super clear on like salary expectations and is it a package or is it like a salary plus super and those kinds of things. Is there a bonus structure involved? Getting really granular. And when you think about an employee coming into the organization, stepping into an employee mindset as well, because it is quite different as an employee, as a business owner. And I think there's things that each kind of party cares about differently, right? So understanding kind of what your leave policy looks like. Is it, do you have standard 4 weeks leave? Do you have 6 weeks? Do you have like an unlimited leave policy? Again, all of these things that are really important to employees, I think making sure that that's really clear in your job description, but also in your contract when it goes out as well.
Yeah, for sure. And in terms of how to get candidates, where would you start with that?
Yeah, I think there's a few different ways. Obviously, you've got job platforms and channels like Seek. You've got LinkedIn, which is really fantastic. Again, I think it depends on what your industry is.
For sure.
Is it a professional services industry? Seek is a really great platform, but maybe you're more in the creative space. There's other platforms that are really useful for that. Maybe you're in the trade space, so there's quite a few out there. And I think that it really just depends on who you're trying to recruit. And then maybe you need someone at a really higher level. Maybe you're wanting to bring in like a head of a department, or a head of operations or a CMO or something like that, in which case it might be worth going through a recruiter.
Yep.
Obviously, there's different fees involved if you're working with a recruiter. But I think, first and foremost, maybe start just with a job posting on like Seek and LinkedIn. See what's available. And then if you have a large social media following, you could start posting it on socials as well. Start to get people that are already following your organization. You don't know that there might not be somebody in your follower list already that, is really passionate about the business and really passionate about what you're doing. And maybe they have the skill set to help you. So I think there's a few different ways through your website, through social media, through job listings. But then also referrals as well. Like if you already have a team of people, maybe they know somebody in their own network.
Yep.
that could be really great for the organization.
For sure. And following on what we spoke about in an episode or two ago when we were talking about building that brand and that personal brand, if you have that network on LinkedIn or on social media, that's where you can leverage that audience and those connections that you do have. I know yourself when you posted a job ad for Inflection.
Yeah.
Like that goes to show you when you do have connections and you start to put some conscious effort into building those connections out on LinkedIn, which is a platform you use.
Yeah.
You got heaps of applications and you found people that you used to work with that were keen.
Yeah, really quickly, which was amazing.
Yeah, for sure. So once you find applicants and they've started to apply, what's your screening process and your interview process look like?
Yeah, great question. So obviously people, when they first apply, they send through their CV and their resume. I would have a look at that. I would have a look at not just necessarily the job title, but what the tasks were that they were completing. I think that's important because sometimes what a job is called in one organization could be slightly different to a different organization. And so I think I focus slightly less on the job title and more about what work that somebody's doing. So I look at what they've been doing and then how long they've kind of been in an organization for. Are they shifting around every 6 to 12 months? Are they kind of setting some roots and sticking around for, 12 to 24 months? What does that look like? What does their growth look like? Have they stayed in the same role and the same job title with the same responsibilities for over a 2-year period, and then kind of having a look at that and saying, well, maybe there's reasons behind that. Maybe the organization didn't have growth. Maybe it was that candidate wasn't interested in kind of what the next opportunities were at that organization, and that's why they're looking elsewhere. So I think just kind of doing a really thorough understanding of where that candidate is in the current market, in their current organization. And then I would step into, I guess, like an interview process. So I would reach out to somebody, obviously thank them for their application. And then the first thing would be a phone call, whether it be just a phone call or whether it actually just be like a quick kind of 20-minute video call. Essentially, that's just to kind of understand culture fit and personality, and understanding kind of maybe what they've done, but then also just do we gel? Like, do we connect? And then the next step would be like a face-to-face interview. I think that's still really important, is having that face-to-face conversation with somebody and kind of reading body language and connecting with them in person. So that would kind of be the second round. And then depending on kind of the job that they're going for, the organization that I used to work at, we had kind of like a challenge involved for certain roles, particularly if it was a data analyst role, we would send them a certain challenge that we could kind of review what their skill set looked like so we could understand what team they would fit into.
What would that look like a challenge? Was it specific to the role?
Yeah, so each role kind of had a specific challenge depending on, what if they were coming in at like a junior level or a senior level. If it was a data analyst role, then we would send them a data set and get them to pull out a few like key findings and I guess what they would do next based on kind of the strategy that we'd sent them. If it was kind of a creative role, then they might get like a creative challenge so we could see what their graphic design skill set looked like. It really depended on the role, but it also gave us a good understanding of not just if someone was a great culture fit, but what was their work like? And then I think my kind of core belief is that I think you can train anybody in anything. I think the most important thing is to get somebody that's a cultural fit within your organization. And when I say cultural fit, I mean mindset, I mean approach to work. I mean, like, do they share your vision for the organization and what that growth looks like? And so I truly believe that anyone can be trained to do anything with the right training program, with the right kind of resources. So I really hire people based on that. And then I think it also allows a lot of opportunity for growth for those individuals as well.
I'm going to ask you selfishly because I'm interviewing someone today.
Yeah.
These skill tests that you're doing, how long do they go for generally?
Again, it sort of really depends. If someone was coming in at a very senior level, then it might be like a 30 to 40-minute task. If they were coming in at a more junior level, then it would be kind of more aligned to that kind of skill set that we would be bringing someone in on.
Okay, cool. Noted. I'm going to have a chat to Daniel about that and maybe make that part of our process too. That's a really good one. Especially, well, I guess would you say when you're hiring someone who doesn't have as much experience, are you just focusing on culture?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think cultural fit definitely at any level. I think it would be an element of understanding potentially what their growth mindset looks like at that stage. So have they worked, what sort of roles have they had? Maybe this could, if it is their first job in accounting and you guys are their first kind of, real job interview, what other roles have they had and how is that related to the industry? So, have they worked in a customer facing role? Are they going to be customer facing in the organization? Have they essentially had stakeholder engagement responsibilities, whether that be in hospitality, whether that be in hotel kind of management, whether that be in retail? If it's not a customer facing role, then, what other kind of skill sets have they got from other places? Because I also think that there's quite a lot of skills that are transferable between different industries that can make someone the right person for your organization.
Yeah, for sure. Especially that customer service. If you did that when you were younger, or one of your first couple of jobs, to have that human interaction and just be able to talk to people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially if you have a role, whether it's in Inflection in a marketing agency or Grey Space being an accounting firm, there's client interactions generally.
Yeah.
So you just want to make sure that the person can talk to another person.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think, one of my previous kind of mentorship roles, which I did was about 18 months ago, worked with an organization that helped people that were shifting from, one industry into digital marketing.
Yep.
And so it could have been, someone that was late in their career, had worked as, someone in particular was a chemical engineer.
Oh, wow.
She'd worked for Pfizer and then decided that she wanted to change her career and wanted to move into digital marketing. And so my role as a mentor and a coach was really to help her understand that there was a lot of skills that she had developed through her 20 years working as a chemical engineer and how they would relate to like data analysis within like a digital marketing role. Obviously, wildly different fields, but there is quite a lot of, there are a lot of skill sets that she developed, a lot of like workplace resilience skill sets, a lot of like interrelational skill sets that were going to be making her really great in a digital marketing role.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting to kind of, I guess, work with different people at different stages in their careers and to kind of see what those transitional stages looked like, shifting from, potentially chemical engineering or maybe in digital marketing or straight into something else. I think it kind of just opened my eyes even more to see that the idea that you can kind of hire anyone if you can train them, if they've got the right attitude, then it's a no-brainer.
And then once you've done that and you've gone through and assessed the candidates, done all the interviews, how do you then differentiate, and do you have a set criteria? What does that look like?
Yeah, and I think having that set criteria is really important before you go into the interview process as well. So understanding, obviously, as we've kind of figured out what job we kind of want to be filling, what that job description looks like, what those role responsibilities look like, then we go, okay, based on all of this, what is our criteria? What are we actually looking for? So then we're kind of going into these interviews not blind, just trying to have a conversation with people, but we're going in with a bit of a goal internally, being like, okay, well, for someone to be successful, for me to move them through to the next round, these are the 3 things that they need to hit, whether it be conversation points, whether it be experience levels, whether it be that they've run certain campaigns or they've worked with certain clients or they've got a certain, client retention percentage or whatever that looks like. Understanding kind of what that criteria looks like for your business and for your industry.
Yeah.
And then how that can be translated into, the next stages of that interview phase.
For sure. I think it's also important to be really specific on the skills that you're looking for.
Yeah.
As well as the qualification. And the reason I say skills is, let's say you run a trades business and you're advertising for an electrician. Cool. But if you expect that person to be able to go to a maintenance job and sell, that's a completely separate skill set. So I think it's super important to be really granular on the skill sets you're looking for. Same as accountants, like, yes, prepare the BAS and do the tax returns. But if there's a client communication component, again, super important that forms part of the job ad, because you want to get candidates that can talk to people.
Absolutely. Yep.
So I think it's really important to be really specific on the skill set that you're looking for.
Yep.
Now, let's say that we've found the right person and we're ready to bring them on board and hire them. What makes a smooth onboarding process for new staff members?
I think standardized onboarding kind of processes.
Yep.
And what I mean by that is like, is there an orientation that needs to take place with the company, with the other team members? I think the company values. So once obviously you've had that conversation, you've brought somebody on board, they've nailed the interview process, then it's like they're welcomed into the organization. I think it's really important that as a leader of an organization, whether you were involved in the interview kind of process or not, or that hiring process, sit down with them, welcome them into the organization and kind of run them through why you're there, start to build that relationship with them. These are the company values. This is what we stand for. We're really excited to have you on board. Start to build that connection outside of just their involvement with the HR team, but their involvement with you as a leader of an organization.
Yeah, for sure. And in terms of once you've done that, you've had that process, can you step us through what it looks like from orientation, training, mentorship, and whatever else falls into that onboarding process?
Yeah, absolutely. So at our last organization, and something that we do at Inflection is that we want like day one to be the best day one that they've ever had. And that can involve anything from, every head of department within their first hour of being in the company, every head of department has to go up and say hello and introduce themselves and say, so excited to have you to the team. This is what I do. This is my team. This is what we work on. This is, the amount of interaction we'll have in a day-to-day, but I'm really looking forward to having you as part of the team. And then it could be that they go out for a team coffee, again, just to kind of start breaking down those awkward barriers and awkward walls that are up when you step into a new organization or you start a new job, because it's daunting. Obviously, you're excited to be there, but the reality is you don't know anyone. Awesome if you do, but if you don't, then it can be really scary. And, you want to make friends, you want to start off on the right foot, you want to make a good impression. So I think it's important, and it comes down to the leaders of the organization to make that person feel as comfortable as possible on their first day.
Yeah.
And to set a really good standard for this is the company culture. This is how we interact with one another. This is what we would expect of you when another person comes into the organization. And so then it would be taking them through a very structured kind of first week. This is what you would expect. You kind of meet with all of the different heads of department. We run you through the internal kind of HR policy, if there's any sort of questions, and then it will be stepping into a training program. So, that first week would more so be, I guess, orientation sort of training, getting themselves familiar with people, the team, and if you're in an office space, then the office space, making sure that they feel comfortable with where everything is. And then it really steps into training for the role. So in the last organization, we really focused, we had a 3-month training program. So the first month was quite intensive. And it was like every day we had either workshops or we had online webinars. There was every time that there was a workshop or a webinar, there was a task that went as a result of that. So it essentially was like a knowledge test to help them. This is what I've learned. Now I'm going to try and execute that. And then we would do twice a week. We would do kind of a review of those tasks. But they were all being onboarded as a group of people. So we would have like a minimum of kind of 4 people at a time that would come on board at the same time. And the benefit of that is just that if they're struggling with something or they want to ask questions, there's someone else that started on the same day that's going through all of those same experiences as them that they can ask and they can kind of lean back on.
Okay, cool. And that training program, was that, let's dive a bit deeper into that. Are you doing job-specific things, cultural-specific things?
Both. So primarily job-specific, but throughout that, it'd be obviously peppered with cultural stuff.
So on that job-specific topic, the training program, did the business build that out or did you bring someone else in to build that out?
Yeah. So we built that out. And the benefit of that meant that myself and my team built that out. And the benefit was that we'd started in the organization. We'd gone through the motions of being new to a business. We'd gone through changes of growth in the organization. So changes in software programs, changes in operational processes and the way that we did things. And it also meant that we were kind of had our finger on the pulse in terms of when other things were changing, we could get these new employees across them as soon as possible. So it was a training program that we built out, and it was just constantly evolving and constantly changing. What we would take someone through in January, the task that we might assign someone as a result of an onboarding or a webinar or a workshop, the task might change 3 months later because the algorithm had changed and the way that we kind of optimized our Facebook accounts might have changed as well.
Yeah, that's why it's so important to constantly be revisiting all of your processes, regardless of what it is, because things are constantly changing.
Absolutely. And I think part of that training program as well, obviously, was there was a feedback kind of session every week. So obviously when a task was completed as a manager or as a leader or as someone who was kind of running that workshop, there would be a feedback session at the end of that, so that the new employees saw, okay, well, this was right, this wasn't right. These are how we fix it. These are how we change it. And then at the end of every week, we also did a feedback session for us and for the company. So we sat down with all of the new employees and said, have you found your first week, or have you found your third week? How did you find the training this week? Was there anything you wished you had? Was there any more kind of touch points you wished you had with us? Again, kind of going back to that two-way piece of two-way communication, making sure that we wanted to set the culture very early on that we're going to provide you feedback, but we also expect you to provide us feedback as well. Because in order for us to grow together, we need to be really, really honest and really transparent with what's working and what's not. And as new people are going through our training program, they're the best people to give us feedback on the training program.
Yeah, for sure. And that allows you to constantly improve it and make sure that it's up to date too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Did you ever do any mentorship or anything like that? I know you mentioned before that you did that for a person changing industries.
Mm-hmm.
Have you done that in an organization where someone younger comes in, or just someone maybe at the same level but just hasn't been part of that culture before?
Yeah, absolutely. We did it a couple of times. So one of the other things that I was responsible for was we built out a graduate program.
Oh, cool.
So we recognized that there was a lot of people going through university that were studying digital marketing. I think the one kind of downside of studying digital marketing at university is because it changes so frequently, the algorithms and kind of how we do things, it doesn't necessarily get reflected in the university courses. So something that we found was that people were coming out of uni wanting to get their first job, but the landscape had changed pretty significantly.
Yeah.
So we saw it as an opportunity to develop a graduate program, which went for 12 months. We got people that were fresh out of uni, 22 years old. We took them through a 12-month kind of onboarding program. They had a buddy as a part of that 12 months. And then at the end of that 12 months, they were able to decide what direction and what path or what team they wanted to join within the organisation.
Yeah, okay. It's interesting you mentioned that about the university thing. I did a marketing subject at uni, and I remember the only thing I remember was the 7 Ps of marketing.
Oh, yeah.
And that's more theory based, but once you get into the real world, if you want to call it that, or into industry, like you said, you're not really doing email marketing at uni. You're not doing Facebook ads, or maybe you are now. I don't know, but from it, we never did. So it's super important that you do have whatever that is under whatever industry you're in. If you can bring people up to speed with what's actually happening, you get massive returns there. And again, you're not going to get those returns at the start. If anything, it'll cost you money at the start.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important in the long run. You'll make that money back if you are providing the training and the mentorship.
Absolutely. And something that we particularly found through the graduate program was that by the end of that 12 months, that person was totally embedded in the company culture. They knew exactly, what the company values were. They'd been in the data team. They'd had 3 months in the data team. They had 3 months in the creative team, whatever that kind of time period looked like. They had one mentor that they followed for the entire 12 months. But as they kind of tested out different teams, they also had a different mentor within each of those teams throughout that period as well. So they got to learn from somebody maybe in the sales team, and they got to sit in on a few sales conversations and a few sales pitches. And the benefit of that meant that by the time they kind of got to the end of 12 months, they were a very well-rounded employee.
Yep.
They understood every area of the business. They understood the sales team and what those conversations were. They understood kind of the onboarding team, the data team, the creative team, and they got to see all of these different, the way that the organisation was made up. So then by the time they got to the end of their graduate program, they were very confident in the direction that they wanted to and the career path that they wanted to take.
Would you say that helped with the retention?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was a really great, part of the hiring program as well, was that by the end of that 12 months, if the employee was like, actually, I've decided that I really want to be creative and I want to work in a creative studio, then they might have shifted onto something else, but we would have provided them with a reference letter because we'd worked with them for 12 months. We'd seen their growth. But yeah, it also helped with the staff retention. That was kind of one of our core KPIs, was to bring our staff retention higher, obviously. The graduate program was great for that.
Yeah. I think it's so important. If you can become well known in the industry for having a really good onboarding and training program, it can pay dividends in the long run.
Absolutely. I think also, the training program, obviously there was for the onboarded, like the first 3 months of those employees. But we also had a training program for people that were wanting to step into management.
Sure.
So people that have been in the organisation for a couple of years, maybe they had progressed to a certain point and they were like, okay, now I really want to manage a team. I think one thing that we found, particularly when we grew so quickly, was that you just throwing people into management without the right training and without the right skill set and resources in their toolkit, it can be really daunting for that person. So what we really did, again, in the lead up, if we'd had a conversation with someone in like their biannual review and they were like, cool, this time next year, I'd love to be in a management position. We would then kind of over 3 to 6 months, we would take them through a management training program. And so that was everything from ways to kind of foster, a learning culture within your team, how to give feedback, how to receive feedback, how to run biannual reviews, everything from kind of like the cultural kind of management mindset part, as well as, the actual practicalities of how to manage and, how to approve leave and how to manage a leave calendar for a team of 7 people and those kinds of things. But I think the core thing was really around like growth mindset and helping people shift from an employee mindset to like a leadership mindset, what that involved, how to recognize growth within your team members, how to recognize when somebody's ready for a stretch target, as opposed to just kind of delegating somebody work, those kinds of things. And I think that was really fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it was a podcast I may have listened to. I don't know where I heard it, but someone becomes really good at their job and they've been doing that job for 7 years, call it Facebook ads, and then they say, I want to be a manager. They've got no experience in that. Just because they're a really good technician doesn't mean they're going to be a really good manager. So having those programs in place really does help bridge that gap.
So important. Yeah.
Just otherwise, if there's no training and they don't have the experience, it's completely different. It's starting a new job essentially.
Yeah.
Because you're less on the tools per se, and it's just managing people, personalities, feedback, and making sure they're happy.
And also, I think one of the things that we found in particular was that just because someone can do something doesn't mean they know how to explain to somebody else how to do something. So then we would say, okay, well, you want to step into management? Cool. We've got our graduate program or our new employee program. Why don't you run some of those workshops? So then it went from just them kind of executing and I guess being a technician. Before stepping into a management kind of role, they would then go and do workshops with our new employees. So they would practice and train on how to deliver, how to kind of speak to a room of, 5 or 6 people, how to give feedback. Also, while they still had a mentor, whether it was myself or whether it was like one of our other training managers, they were still there with them so they could give them feedback at the end of the session on how they went. But again, it just kind of gave them the ability to practice and train in that management role before they'd stepped into a management role.
Could you run through what it looks like to manage and improve employee performance? Let's say you've gone through that program. Tell us about the program. How would you do it? Walk us through performance reviews, goal settings, all of that fun stuff.
Yeah. I mean, all of that stuff's so important. I think goal setting's huge. And my general kind of rule of thumb is you should always have very achievable, but also stretch targets for people. So if I was...
What's a stretch target?
Yeah, that's a good one. So when I'm kind of coming up with my progression pathway for a team member and I'm setting their goals and their KPIs, again, you do it with them. I think, in order for somebody to buy into the direction that they're going and how they can get there, they have to be a part of that conversation. You can't just set goals and KPIs and give them to someone, particularly as they're wanting to progress. You want to do that with them. And I think make sure that they understand why those goals are there, why those KPIs are there, and what that means if they achieve them. So I think, in terms of stretch targets, my rule of thumb that was if I'm ever wanting to help train and develop someone into the next stage of their career, if I'm allocating work, I should never be delegating work. I should be giving work that I'm a little bit uncomfortable with. And what that means, in my opinion anyway, what that means is that I'm not just giving someone work that I know they can do, because that's just delegating. I'm giving someone work that I believe in their abilities. I trust them. I know they can do it, but maybe they have to stretch a little bit further and take maybe a little bit of a risk and try something a little bit different to achieve this other tasks that I've delegated. So I always say that people should always, when you're delegating work or allocating work, you should always be giving people things that they have to stretch a little bit for that's not completely within their wheelhouse.
Yeah, okay.
And so the way that I would kind of explain that to new managers that were coming into the team was like, if you're allocating work to somebody within your team and you want to give them kind of the ability to kind of progress, whatever you're allocating, you should be a little bit uncomfortable with it. And not uncomfortable to to the sense of like, oh my God, if this fails and then the company's ruined.
Yeah.
But in the sense of like, I know this person can do it. I know they haven't done it before, but I'm going to give them the right training and I'm going to be supportive and I can help them kind of get there. But I know that they're going to have to work a little bit harder or try a few different things than they've already tried in the past. And I think that really opens the opportunities for them as well. Because if they're, if you're constantly given work that you know you can do, it's just ticking boxes. It's just check boxes, right? Whereas if someone says, hey, I've got this new thing, I know you haven't done it before, but I trust you and I know that you have the skill set and the ability and I'm absolutely here with you the whole way. Ask me whatever you want. Give them a really strong brief of what's involved and give them an idea of what success looks like at the end, like what the end result should look like so they know what they're working towards, and then let them go. Let them kind of play around with it. Let them make mistakes. Let them sort of figure out how to get there, because then once they do achieve it and they get to the end, the reward, the internal reward, in my own experience anyway, the internal reward is much higher. The sense of satisfaction.
Just thinking about the stuff that we do at Grayspace now, and we need to fix a few things. But it's clear that like that's been so well thought out.
Yeah.
From start to finish as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's also like, I obviously went through my own kind of period of growth and understanding as I stepped into management. I went from being a technician and being in the role to developing our training program, which was very much looking after new employees that maybe hadn't had much experience before. And then as my career progressed, I moved from employing and training new employees to training and managing our heads of department and people that have been in the organisation for 5 years or something like that.
Yeah.
And helping them, obviously within their own management roles, but then helping them as managers train and upskill other managers.
Yeah.
So then I had to learn very quickly, through failures, as we all do, and doing things the wrong way and saying the wrong things and making mistakes and stumbling over myself, what works and what doesn't work. And I think the other thing that's really important if you're a new manager is transparency.
Yeah.
Like that was one of the massive things. If I was ever trialing something new, I would say to my team, or if I was ever going into a meeting and I was uncomfortable, I would say, just be really open with it. This is really hard for me to do. I've never done this before, but I'm doing it and this is what I'm hoping to get at the end of it. And I think it just helps to develop to like that respect with them as well. And then they can say, okay, they might be more open to giving you feedback at the end of it as well. But yeah, I think that was something that I always tried to do a lot, was be really open. If I was trying something new, I would say, haven't done this before. We're going to do it this way. I want to do it with you guys. I want your feedback. If it's not working, before we roll it out, give me your thoughts. What's the best way to go about this? Do you feel comfortable having this conversation? Does this make sense? You're, in there doing this sort of work. Does this make sense for you? Does this make sense for the work that you're doing? And then, I think it then allowed them to say, okay, well, she's trying something new.
Yeah. So
she's our manager. And she's trying something new. Maybe we can try something new.
Yeah. And with that and the whole trying something new, are you going through and setting goals as you're going? Like for yourself as that manager, even though you are trying new things, you're setting goals for the staff. What time frame are you putting these goals or KPIs, whatever they may be? How are you doing it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I had team leaders that I was managing, and my goal was to develop them into heads of department. And my long-term goal was like, if I can get these people to a point where they don't need me, then I've done my job.
Yeah.
And to a point where they don't have to ask me questions, where I'm, I guess, obsolete in a way, then that's my job done.
Yeah, okay.
Because that means that they feel super comfortable. They've progressed to the next part of their career. So my goal, I would have different goals with different employees. Obviously, again, sitting down and being like, look, I think these are your strengths. I think these are your areas of opportunity. I would love to see you go in this direction. Do you want to go in that direction? Do you want to go in this direction? And then sitting down and having that conversation with them. And if they want to go down path A, then be like, okay, cool. Well, this is where you're at right now. This is where you would need to get to. And that's what the path A would look like. This was what the end result would look like. These would be the responsibilities of that role. This is kind of where the gap is right now. Let's kind of work on filling this gap and let's do it over a period of 6 to 12 months or whatever it might look like. Having that conversation with them, making sure that the employee is comfortable with what that time period looks like as well. Because if they think they can achieve it in 6 and you as a manager are like, it'll take 12 months, have that conversation. Or maybe they don't want to move as quickly and they want to slow down that progression rate because for whatever reason, maybe they're not quite so comfortable moving so fast. Maybe they love what they're doing and their 12-month goal is that. Again, having those conversations. But I think when you are coming up with, how someone is going to fill that gap, doing that with them, again, is really important. So if I say, cool, great, you're a team leader and you manage 7 people and you want to move into a head of accounts position, cool, this is the difference between a head of accounts and this is the difference between a team leader. These are the skill sets that we need to develop you in, whether it's, understanding cash flow projections, whether it's understanding profit margins for clients, whether it's understanding like higher level strategy, stepping out of like the doing of the work and stepping into the bigger picture kind of business growth, whether it's to do with employee growth and how to recognize growth opportunities within employees and when someone's stagnating and when you need to be able to, push someone a little bit further, how to recognize those signs. So then it would just be a matter of if I was having a conversation with someone, maybe I would bring that person into it. I would obviously say to that first employee, hey, this is what's happening. This is my friend. This is my, my employee, blah, blah, blah. They really want to, would you mind if they sat in and listened to our conversation? And on the flip side of that, if I knew that there was a conversation they needed to have with one of their employees, I'd say, do you want me to sit in it? I won't say a thing. I'll just sit there and I'll give you feedback at the end. And then that would be, they would kind of have their, whether it be like a performance review, whether it be a goal setting session or like just like a general kind of client strategy kind of, this is client results. This is what we need to be doing. This is how they're giving feedback. At the end of it, I'd give them feedback on how they went.
Where did you learn how to do this? Were you trained in how to do that or?
Both. So just self-taught and passionate.
Yeah. Okay.
Always been really passionate about employee growth and like helping people achieve new things and that sense of satisfaction that they get. But then self-taught through like LinkedIn learning, listening to heaps of podcasts, watching heaps of YouTube videos. I was never actually, like trained or anything. Did like my own kind of professional development.
Yeah, cool. Because it seems very well thought out.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Sounds like it's working. Would you say that doing all of these things we've spoken about really does help foster that positive work culture?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Because I think, again, in my opinion, the thing that creates a positive work environment, it boils down to more than just a fun culture.
Yeah.
It boils down to workplace satisfaction and work satisfaction. In order to stick around with an organization and to be loyal to an organization and to be motivated to do your best, you need to enjoy what you're doing and you also need to know where you're going. Initially, obviously you come on board for a certain role, but everyone wants to grow and everyone wants to scale and everyone wants to progress. And that could be in so many different ways. It could be in skill set. It could be in technical ability. It could be in salary, whatever that looks like. I think being really clear with your team very early on so they know what they're working towards, I think is really important. And then it helps to, set those rewards and those recognition points as well. I think recognition's a massive one. Recognizing when people do good work and letting them know that they've done good work and that you notice it. Because I think quite often, again, as employees or as businesses grow and how many things as a business owner or as a leader in an organization, you're juggling so many things and you might have 10 employees that you're managing, you might have 12 or 15 employees, you might have 2 employees, but there's so many things that's on your plate, but you have to let your employees know that you see them and that you recognize the work that they're doing. And even if something fails, that you go, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, I know it didn't work. I know you gave it your all and it failed. That's okay. This is what we've learned from that. I think creating fostering a culture of like failure is okay is really important for a positive workplace as well, because it means that if people are failing, then they're taking risks. And I think that's really important. I think people need to take risks for growth, for innovation within their own role, for innovation within the organization as well. They need to be trying new things. And people, if they don't feel supported, they won't try those things.
Yeah.
And that is, I guess, your role as a manager and a leader is to make people feel supported so that they can try new things. So I think all of that, again, kind of comes down to open communication, transparent communication, that two-way kind of feedback loop is really important, and consistent feedback loop. I think if you sit down with someone in their quarterly review or biannual review or whatever that looks like and give them feedback on a certain area of their role that they need to develop in, then you need to be going back in your next kind of monthly check-in and say, hey, this is how you've progressed in that area. So that you're not just waiting another 3 to 6 months before you review that area of growth. You need to kind of be consistently revisiting that feedback.
I remember when I was, before Gracebase, I was working at an organization, and we did there was a big emphasis on team building, going out for lunch and all of this type of stuff. Do you think that has its positives?
Absolutely. I think, again, everyone also wants to enjoy the people that they work with, right?
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
And because, yes, you go to work, but you also you spend 40 hours there a week. Like, you need to enjoy who you work with. You need to know your colleagues outside of this is the work that they do and these are the clients that we're working on. So I think those team building activities really help to strengthen the relationships within the organization. And I think once you have these strong external relationships, it can also help to have a stronger internal relationship because people know you outside of the workplace and they know you outside of their manager or their colleague. And it, again, like the same way that, we connect with people, we connect on a human level and an emotional level. And sometimes it's really important to develop those emotional relationships. Yeah. And the best way to do that is outside of work.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's super important. I still remember the team building exercises. We played bubble soccer.
Bubbles. Yeah, we did that when you're in the big balloon things.
Yeah. I'd beeline straight for my manager. Bang. Good times.
It's intense. Yeah. I also think, having those team building kind of activities helps to promote like work-life balance as well, which again is so important. And I think it's really important as managers that you need to lead by example. You need to show that you believe in having a healthy work-life balance and you believe that it should exist. And that can be anything from not sending an email after hours, to if you use Slack or Teams, whatever it is, not messaging people after hours and not expecting them to reply after hours. Yeah. I also think it's illegal now.
Is it?
Yeah.
Then we're going to jail.
Or maybe it's not illegal, but I think it's part of I read something the other day that, it's just part of like a contractual kind of agreement now, that employees have the right to switch off outside of kind of working hours. Actually, I think it was one of our clients or one of the guys in the Inflection community. I saw it on his blog.
Really?
Yeah.
There you go. Maybe we need to start doing that.
Yeah. I think it was on Hardy's website.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think it's really important to promote that work-life balance. And it comes down to, obviously, I think like the way that we talk about work within the organization, the way that we talk about our clients, the way that we kind of talk about problem solving, the way that we move through issues as a company. All of that comes into work-life balance as well. But I also think that, showing people that it's, when we switch off, we switch off.
Yeah.
That... Again, I think like the way that I kind of approach work and work with employees is there's no like strict time frames of like you get a 30-minute lunch break, you get a 15-minute coffee break, and you have to work for 3 hours before you can take your lunch break, and you only get sick leave on this day or whatever it is. It's if someone wants to take 5 coffee breaks in a day and an hour lunch break, but if you get your work done.
Yeah, I agree.
Good on you.
Yeah.
If you are employed to work 40 hours a week and you get your work done in 30, go you.
Yeah.
It means you're efficient and it means that you've worked out a way to work more efficiently. And if your client's needs are met and you're meeting your goals and you're exceeding your expectations, go for it.
Yeah, I agree. I think as long as the client expectations and the client's happy, for us, that's number one.
Absolutely.
Then, I agree. I think a lot of businesses are moving away from that traditional bureaucratic type structure.
Yeah.
But it's good to see.
I think, the other thing that kind of bleeding on from work-life balance is like employee wellbeing as well. So whether that be certain like programs and initiatives in the organization that, like wellbeing days, mental health days, whatever that sort of looks like, birthday leave, all that kind of stuff, essentially, ways that you can be promoting the healthy work-life balance, but also the ways that you can be promoting their own personal well-being. Again, in my old company, we had like once a week or like once a month, we would do like a yoga day, we would do a Pilates day, we would do like a movie night or whatever it looked like, whatever was relevant at that time. And it was really just to get people to, it could have been yoga at 4:00 in the afternoon, or Pilates and Pilates classes. We did that every fortnight. We had a Pilates class, external studio. It was booked at 4:00. So most people would, switch off at 3:30, get changed. We'd all walk to the Pilates studio together. We'd do a workout, again, releasing endorphins, all the great things that happen as a result of a workout. And then as a team, quite often we'd go out for dinner afterwards as a group of people, and everyone went home. And so there were a lot of different ways.
You finished work at 3:30?
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, yeah.
It is important, but it is important.
I think it's important. I think that, again, it's important to lead by example.
Yeah.
And I know that it's much harder as, leaders of an organization to switch off at 3:30. And I'm not saying that I then didn't get home at 7:00 and
bang out those emails.
Bang out, and schedule emails to send at 9 a.m. the next morning.
Yeah.
Or, get on top of kind of everything else. But yeah, I just think it is important to build that relationship with your employees and show them that, it is okay, and you should be doing this, and you should be, having a really healthy work-life balance.
Yeah, and even I think it ties into that team building side of things too, like the yoga and whatnot. You're having conversations when you're going there, when you're there, that you're not having in the office.
Absolutely. And potentially you're mingling with different people as well. Yeah. And it could be anything from, we also used to do volunteering, like once a month. There was like one of our clients, you could volunteer for them.
Cool.
And so people signed up and it was always booked out. So yeah, just lots of different things. I know some places would have like a breakout area where people could just go and any time of the day they could work in different areas. Again, just I think like breaking up the traditional kind of stigma of this is a workplace, we work from 9 to 5, we take lunch from 12:30 to 1:15, we'll clock on, clock off sort of thing, and really just changing it up. And I think it's really important because, I know myself, I don't work well in a 9 to 5 structured environment. The way that I jump around a lot, and I have like different areas, different times of the day that I'm really productive in the morning, really productive at night. From about 2 to 4 p.m., I'm a bit of a vegetable.
Yeah. Not
much really goes on. So, and it takes a while, I think, also like working to figure out what those golden hours, what those productivity hours are for you. And also knowing that at certain times of the day, or me anyway, certain times of the day, I operate in better ways. Like I'm more creative at certain times, or I'm more administrative at certain times. And so I think getting to a point where you can structure your day like that, obviously is a privilege to be able to structure your day in a way that you want. But also if you can kind of allow employees to say, well, I'm really productive from 8 a.m. till 10, great, then let them start at 8 a.m., let them go have a coffee break at 10 till 10:30, and then they come back and they're really productive until 1, and then they go for lunch, and then, whatever that sort of looks like, let them kind of design their own day. I think, again, I know the way that I work best, and I think if we want to get the best out of our employees, then it really comes down to helping them work in the best way that they possibly can, where they're going to feel as productive as they can.
Yeah, I agree. And look, this more so, I believe, not all of it, but some of it does apply a lot more to knowledge workers.
Yeah.
Whereas in that construction-based game, it's a bit different.
Yeah, I agree.
And only so for those hours that you're working and being dictated when you're taking lunch and whatnot, because things are a little bit different. But that does not mean you can't start doing all the team building, promoting a work-life balance. That can still all be done.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just a little caveat on that one.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point.
I know that we've spoken a lot about the team and whatnot, shifting the focus now to the legal side of things.
Mm-hmm.
How important is it to make sure that you're adhering to all the laws and whatnot, because they're forever changing and they're a complete nightmare.
Yeah, it's super important. I think that's where it's really important to not just wing out, work with a lawyer.
Get
your contracts built out correctly so they're compliant legally, that they're super clear to employees as well. I think, we've all been on the other side of an employment contract where there's so much legal jargon, you have no idea what you're signing at the end of it. So I think make sure that you obviously are super compliant, but then also make sure that like employees have the ability to ask questions if they're not sure what something means. And so I think that's really important. I think workplace policies, developing and communicating your workplace policies, again, or just making sure that like people know what to expect when they walk in the door, or when they sign on, and how they should conduct themselves, or whatever those workplace policies look like. Make sure that they're clear and that they're outlined from the beginning, so that there's no confusion.
On the policies and whatnot, are you using a software to track all of this stuff? Like when you're having the reviews, you're setting the goals, are you using a platform, or is it just like a Word doc?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would probably recommend like a HRM platform, and there's a lot of different ones out there, whether it's like Employment Hero, whether it's, I've gone blank on what the other ones are, but there's a lot of really great ones out there that you can use. So I think it's just understanding, making sure that the programs meet kind of the needs that you want to do.
Pretty much, yeah, everything we've gone through today. It should really split that out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's really important, to have it documented, not just for you, but for your team and for your employees as well. So it's not just a Word doc that's randomly stored on your computer that then when you go into that quarterly review or biannual review, you've got 200 documents in there, you can't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
But also then that like it's a HRM system that the employee can log into and they can see what their goals and their KPIs are. So then again, it just kind of keeps that communication really transparent between both parties. They know what they're working towards, you know what they're working towards. So then when it comes into that review session, you can have those conversations. And in that same platform, have all of your workplace policies in there. So if an employee is ever confused or they're not sure, they're like, what's the policy on, equipment, taking my equipment home?
Yeah.
I can't remember if I'm allowed to take my laptop home or not.
Yep.
What's the policy around working from home? And, whatever that looks like, that they can just find it online. Obviously, it also is a lot more efficient rather than them having to come and have a meeting with a HR person or send emails and all that kind of stuff, if they can source that information themselves. And then obviously, I think part of that is like health and safety, making sure that's really clear. Again, different for different industries. And then dispute resolution, I think, is also really important. So whether it be dispute resolution around a performance review, whether it be around like a workplace claim, whatever that looks like, again, that's all really clear. And so both parties know that if someone steps out of line, this is kind of what the resolution or what the process looks like for kind of rectifying that.
There's so much there. There's so much.
Huge.
And I think as a business owner, it's probably, again, staffing in my opinion, the most important thing.
Yeah.
Because you can't scale, you can't grow.
Yeah.
If you like, I think we discussed it in one of the previous episodes, where if you're going to spend all this money on marketing, but you don't have the people power to deliver the work, then it's pointless doing the marketing. It's pointless focusing on the finance or the sales. So I think operations, and this for me personally has been one of the best episodes in terms of me learning things.
Yep.
I think it was great.
That's nice.
Because it's something that you just sort of push to the side. We've done it. It's you sort of push it to the side. It's just bring the work in, get the work done, maintain that quality of service. Yet people is the most important thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm super keen to chat to you after this episode.
Great. I'm looking forward to it.
That was awesome. If you wanted to pick Zara's brain, we're going to have a link in the show notes where you can book a discovery call, or disco call, as she calls it.
Yeah, I do, disco call.
In that disco call, you can pick Zara's brain about all things HR and marketing as well.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
The disco calls are free. Links in the show notes, and feel free to book away.
Yeah, love to chat, love to hear from you guys.
Awesome. That was great. Thanks, Zara.
Thanks, Jordan.
Thanks for watching this video on the Rask Network. While you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can get videos each and every day on business, finance, investing, and so much more.